When you're weighing a pre-built gaming rig, the biggest worry is whether you'll end up with a flashy box that looks good on a YouTube thumbnail but leaves you cursing at 4K textures that never load. That's the feeling I had before I sat down with the ASUS ROG G700, a machine that promises fearless ROG design and a lineup of the newest Intel and NVIDIA chips. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon, and I'm going to walk through what that spec sheet actually means once the case is open, the monitors are on, and the first games start loading. First off, the G700 looks like a piece of modern art. The dual glass side panels give you a full view of the internals, which is great if you love the aesthetic of a high-end build but hate the hassle of assembling one yourself. The glass isn't just for show, though it also serves as a passive heat guide, reflecting a bit of the internal exhaust away from the chassis. That said, the glass can feel a little fragile when you're moving the system from a desk to a shelf, so if you travel a lot or have kids who like to poke at shiny things, you might want to consider a more conventional metal case. Inside, the unstoppable power claim is driven by the Intel Core Ultra 7265KF and an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 5070 Ti. In practice, the CPU delivers solid single-core performance that translates to snappy load times in games like Elden Ring and Starfield. The RTX 5070 Ti, while not the absolute top end of the RTX 6000 series, still handles ray-traced settings at 1440p without dropping below 60 frames per second on most titles. If you're aiming for a 1080p or 1440p experience, you'll be well within the sweet spot. The 32GB of DDR5 RAM is more than enough for today's games, and it gives you headroom for streaming or keeping a dozen browser tabs open while you game. Real-world testing showed that even when I ran Cyberpunk 2077 with ultra settings, the frame rate stayed stable, though I did have to dial the DLSS setting to balanced to avoid occasional microstutters. Thermal performance is where the G700 starts to separate itself from the crowd. The quad-fan front intake works together with a 240mm liquid cooler mounted on the CPU, and the case's internal airflow channels keep the GPU and CPU running under 75°C under load. In a typical 2-hour gaming session, the fans stayed at a relatively low pitch, meaning the desk didn't become a mini concert. That said, the liquid cooling loop is pre-filled and sealed, which is convenient, but it also means you don't have much room to upgrade the radiator size without opening the case and reworking the plumbing. If you're a hardcore overclocker who likes to push the CPU well beyond stock, you might eventually feel constrained. Connectivity is another practical win. The built-in 2.5 gigabits per second Ethernet port makes a noticeable difference when you're pulling high-resolution textures over a wired network, and the Wi-Fi 6 module delivers a stable wireless link even in a house full of smart devices. I tested the Wi-Fi connection by streaming a 4K video while playing a fast-paced shooter. There was no perceptible lag or dropouts. The case also provides plenty of USB-A and USB-C ports on the rear panel, plus a couple of front panel USB-C slots for quick plug-and-play with VR headsets or external SSDs. Now, let's talk about what the G700 might not be for you. The first downside is price. Because ASUS bundles the latest CPU and GPU, the sticker price lands in the upper mid-range of pre-built somewhere between $2,200 and $2,500 depending on sales. If you're comfortable building a PC yourself, you could shave a few $100s off by buying components individually and reusing an older case. Secondly, the system comes with Windows 11 Home pre-installed. While Windows 11 is solid, the Home Edition lacks the group policy controls and some advanced networking features that power users or small studios might need. Upgrading to Pro is an extra cost and a step you'll have to take if you need those features. Another practical consideration is upgradability. ASUS marketed the G700 as ready for upgrades with toolless access, and that holds true for swapping out the SSD or adding a second M.2 drive. However, the GPU slot is a full-size PCIe 4.0x16, which fits the RTX 5070 Ti nicely, but there isn't a lot of clearance for a larger aftermarket cooler if you ever want to replace the GPU with a higher-tier model. The power supply is a 750W unit that's sufficient for the current components, but it's not modular, so cable management can get messy if you add more drives or a bigger GPU later. Who should buy this machine? If you're a gamer who values immediate performance out of the box, appreciates a high-end aesthetic, and wants a system that can handle modern titles at 1440p with ray tracing, the G700 checks those boxes. It also works well for streamers who need a stable platform that can run both the game and encoding software without choking. You'll also benefit if you're not interested in tinkering with BIOS settings or swapping cooling loops. ASUS handles the fan.